Hello fellow Dungeon Masters, Todd Moonbounce here. Wanted to bring you a quick video to help you convert some of that pre-written existing material out there for your campaign, whether you're adding to your campaign just a quick offshoot adventure, or you want to run a one-shot, just get your feet wet with the Star Wars 5e system and use something that exists out there. Just give you a few quick tips that help you with that process, show you that it's not really that difficult to convert any existing material over to Star Wars 5e as long as you have a good understanding of that system. So that being the main point here, or the main expectation, is that you do understand Star Wars 5e. You've either DM'd it before or you've played it well enough that you understand the mechanics, all the aspects that go into the game. That's obviously going to be a key part of this process. So, but once you have that down, you can almost pretty easily take any written module out there and convert that pretty easily into Star Wars 5e. So my first tip, and this is almost really the main tip overall, but it's going to be to read the adventure. It seems pretty obvious, but it's pretty important. Reading the adventure helps you know the whole story, beginning to end, and that's going to help you in the conversion process. If you try and do it in chunks, you might not understand why this encounter or how this encounter affects another encounter or another part of the story down the road. So you definitely need to at least read through that whole thing, see how everything connects beginning to end, so that when you're going through the conversion process, you can make those adjustments and you can maybe change things up if you want. So that's another cool thing about conversion, is that you can adjust things really however you want. You can take bits and pieces, you can change up the enemies, all kinds of things to fit your specific campaign. Maybe you want to put it into a different era than it was originally written for. All that stuff is pretty easy to do. You take the bare bones of that story. So first things, make sure you read the adventure beginning to end. Next up, you kind of want to have an idea of the party level that you're going to be using this for. You can take an adventure, and most adventures are going to tell you that this is written for a party of X at level Y. So that's another thing. Keep in mind the party level and then your party size as well. This, of course, comes with an understanding of encounter building, but you want to know what level you're going to create this for, and so that as you go and adjust the enemies and the skill checks and things, that you have that in mind. Most adventures, pre-written adventures that you're going to convert, you can easily change the level that they were originally written for. Some of the tasks or some of the encounters, they might still have a feel for a smaller or a lower level size or a higher level size, but there's certainly, it's not too difficult to adjust that on the fly. So you could go up 2, 3, 4 levels, and you're not going to run into any issues there. So once you figured it out, you've read through that module, you know what level you want to convert this over to. One of the next biggest things is going to be swapping out those enemies, NPCs. Those don't always have stat blocks, so you don't need to really bother with that, but the enemies are going to be a key factor. Depending on what your system you're working with, I personally run a lot of old Star Wars D20 and Saga Edition modules. Some of that stuff is similar to the 5e system, and that helps. But I know I've talked to people that want to use the Star Wars FFG system, and that is very different. That system is very different to Star Wars 5e, so there's not enough of a connection there to help out in that process. But that doesn't really matter. If you've read through the story and you understand what's happening in the story, the module likely is going to say, and then the heroes encounter a group of stormtroopers. Okay, well, Star Wars 5e has stat blocks for stormtroopers. Swap them in. Know your party level, as we mentioned before, and where this is in the story, how difficult this should be. Throw X number of stormtroopers at them that's appropriate for the situation. There you go. You converted that just like that. It's that simple. Going a little further on this, you want to use encounter building tools. So I just Google Encounter Builder 5E, and there's a couple great results there. I'll have some links to the stuff that I use in the video description, but I have one that gives me a quick overview. I can choose the difficulty level, number of party members, and their level, and then it goes by the challenge rating and just gives me a chart that says your party can handle X number at challenge rating Y, and so on. So that gives me a rough idea. And then there's one further tool that if you want to but utilize different numbers, quantities of different challenge rating monsters, then you can have that in there. So you say you had like 1 of challenge rating 3 and 5 of challenge rating 1/2. So I'll share those tools, but use that stuff because again, you want to keep in mind your party level, your party size, and where they're at in the story, and make sure because what was used in that previous module might not line up with the Star Wars 5e stat block. So you need to have that relation there. After you've figured out the encounter size and whatnot, challenge, you need to swap those enemies in. If they don't exist, reflavor an existing monster. If you're familiar with traditional 5e, and especially as a DM, you've probably done this already, but that's easy to do. If it's a beast, grab a similar beast, just flavor it up a little bit differently. If they're just a scoundrel or something that they're encountering, it's easy to take a humanoid type block and adjust it there. And then this would be just good knowledge to have if you're not too familiar with the process, but learn how to build custom monsters. It's a potentially seemingly overwhelming process at first, but it's not that bad. I was in that position. I thought it was a lot to do, but once I got into it, I realized it wasn't that bad, and that's helped a lot as I've used this old material. I've been able to look at the module and say, okay, I need this monster. It doesn't exist, but this is what I want it to do. This is the feel I want it to have for this encounter, and that just helps you build that out and still create that adventure as originally planned. So after that, after you've got your monsters taken care of, the other main aspect is going to be the skill checks that come up in the game. So if you have some familiarity with the old systems, the other systems you're coming from, that obviously helps. But really, context is going to be your best friend when doing this. It's pretty easy to read through that adventure and know what the players or the heroes are supposed to do. Whether that's, in 5e, in Star Wars 5e, a technology check. I know that in some of the old D20 and Saga editions, they call that, or they have a computer use is the skill. So, that's going to be obviously a technology check for Star Wars 5e. They have listen checks. That's going to be perception in Star Wars 5e. Reading through the context, it's going to be pretty easy to tell what they were asking for. The heroes are coming up into a hallway, and they need to see if there's any enemies present. Okay, that's perception. You know what that is. The heroes are aboard a starship, and they need to see if they can find the secret compartment. That's going to be investigation. Going back to the first tip, make sure you read that whole adventure, and via context, you should be able to pick out what your players should be doing in that moment and set that specific skill check. For the DCs of those skill checks, again, just set those whatever you feel is appropriate. That should be something that you understand as a DM. So depending on the level, if you adjust the level for your party for this adventure, adjust the DCs appropriately. and depending on where it is in the story, adjust that as well. So that's the other half of choosing the skill check and then choosing the difficulty. Just make sure you pay attention to that context and what seems appropriate. But again, easy way to just swap something over from what exists. And that's pretty much it, guys. Again, read the whole adventure front to back. Make sure you understand what you're going after. Choose a level if you're going to change any level for your party that you're going to utilize this for. Swap in those monsters and adjust the skill checks. That's basically it. There's no reason that it has to be this big long out process of copy paste, putting it into a different format. That's Star Wars 5E. Grab the old material, read through the story, have some notes, and there you go. You're good to go. As I said, I personally use a lot of D20 and Saga Edition stuff, and that is a lot closer to 5e than the FFG system, so that does make things a lot easier. I don't know the Star Wars FFG system very well at all. I know a little bit that they have that narrative dice system and whatnot. And I've had people ask me about converting the FFG modules, and I just haven't looked at them to really see what that process would be or how that would be different. But again, I would go about it the same way. I would sit down, grab that module, read it beginning to end, swap in the enemies, and figure out what are the players doing, what skill checks are appropriate, and so on. So, it's that easy. Hopefully, that helps you out, gives you some confidence that you can go and grab some old content out there and throw that into your own campaign, help you get some ideas started. A lot of these pre-written modules are great to drop in and start a campaign, set up your campaign, and then you can homebrew from there. Or if you're in between maybe a major episode or act in your campaign, you can bring something in and switch it up there. So thanks again, everyone, for checking out our videos. Make sure, if you haven't, hit subscribe so you see all our future content here, and check out dungeonjedimasters.com and listen to our podcast, weekly podcast. Of course, you're here on YouTube watching all our videos here. Hit us up on Twitter with any questions or future content requests. We have live streams on Twitch, which you can also join with our One Shot Wednesdays. So make sure to check that out as well. And lastly, if you feel that this content is worthwhile and you'd like to help us continue to bring this out to you, we do have a Patreon where you can support us there, and we do offer some Patreon exclusive content. So thanks again, everyone, and may the Force be with you.